Hi everyone and welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today is episode 139 and I had a hard time getting this episode out the door because it's the middle of February here. There's a lot of viruses and colds going around, and the last 2 weeks I've just been dealing with one thing after another. So I'm happy to be back in good enough shape to get an episode out. And because, as the title suggests, winter is here, I wanted to accommodate some of my dub techno and deep techno fans and come back and do a dub techno, deep techno related episode. I don't think I've done one probably for the last 6 or 7 months. So I think for the fans of that genre on this channel, you guys are really going to enjoy this. For today, I have 6 different picks, various artists, different labels, and I think these are a pretty good reflection of some of the best dub techno related acquisitions and also deep techno, like I said, that I've come across in the last year and a half. Not to say that they're all new, but they're all new to me, and I thought I spent a lot of time kind of curating and culling it, and like, yeah, this one's not good enough, I'm not going to talk about that. And what I settled on are 6 really solid picks that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. So let's get started. First up, the ever present STL, who seems to never stop producing. STL, Stefan Lobner. He's been making techno and minimal and abstract for probably the last 25 years. For some reason, I'm always drawn to his releases. It's kind of like it's the same way that I feel about Ricardo Villalobos, where there's just something that makes me always click on an STL record when it comes out, and I at least have to check it. And because they put out so much volume, I just end up eventually finding some that I really like. And because of that, and the relative, usually STL records are cheap, I end up having a lot of them. I probably have 15 STL records. They usually have really cool cover art. Sometimes they'll go with a sci-fi UFO theme, which immediately gets my attention. Here, STL released a triple pack on this label called, I think it's called Goldmine, and it's a triple pack album called Illumination. And you can see here, big surprise, I bought another purple record. I've said before, purple's my favorite color, so I obviously I really tend to fall heavily towards my biases there, but it's a really nice gatefold with a kind of cover that reminds me of the Brock Van Way quadruple pack on Echo Space. It has that same kind of like cloudy gatefold look to it. When I looked at this logo here, I don't know if you guys can, yeah, you can see that pretty good. I really thought that was Luck of Access. If you look at the Luck of Access logo, it's actually very similar to this. And I thought, well, maybe this is a sub-label to that, but I don't see any connection to them in my preliminary searching. So I guess they just happen to have a logo that looks like the Luck of Access one. But this ended up being a pretty expensive release. And with the dollar index falling recently, it's making triple packs and double packs really, really untasty looking when you go to check them out on a website like Dex or Juno. The only reason, I'll admit, the only reason I was able to pull the trigger on this and justify it is because I had a gift certificate that somebody gave me for Juno at Christmas time. So when you're spending somebody else's money, it's a little bit easier. But onto the music. STL delivered another album that is much in line with what you would expect from his releases on his own label or on Smallville. Like I said, this is the Goldmine label, and I think this is the first release on there. And it is a hybrid of typical weird kind of hard-hitting STL tracks, like right down the middle for what you would expect from him. But sprinkled in with this album are 3, maybe 3.5, depending on how you want to categorize them, more dub techno tracks. And this isn't the first time that STL has done dub techno. You can find dub techno going way back into his catalog into the early 2000s. But there was one track in particular on here that stood out to me, and it was the first one. It's called Stoner Dub on the A1. And when I listened to it, I immediately gravitated towards it. And then after listening through the sample a few more times, it took me a little while to realize why I was gravitating towards it. And I'm pretty convinced that this is like a version or a remix of Maurizio's M7 B-side. If you listen to the bass line here and the tinges of dub echo that sort of careen in the higher frequencies, it sounds very much the lightning, like the lightning storm effect that you get when you really immerse yourself into M7. And the fact that it's called stoner dub, I'm sure that STL knows and is very much aware that it sounds like M7. I think he's basically throwing everybody a bone there and saying, basically releasing an M7 remix or new version without actually calling it that. And as soon as you call something stoner dub, you're guaranteed to sell you're guaranteed to sell a bunch of copies to a certain demographic. Let's put it that way. you're gonna get people's attention with a title like that. But it's a really nice long, I think maybe 10-11 minute track. It's the star of the album. And like I said, on the, I think it's the D and the F side, there's also some dub techno there. So if you want to check out the album and see what STL has done recently in the dub techno world, check out the Illumination album by STL. So that was an expensive record, very expensive, admittedly. Let's do a cheap one. Going back to 2008, I dug this up from kind of like the archive section of my shelf, the forgotten and overlooked, but that doesn't mean that they're bad records. And here I dug up this one here. This is from the old Apple Pips label, which was run by like a dubstep / techno hybrid producer, and I don't know if it's Apple Blim or Apple Blime. I'm gonna say Apple Blim. I don't know. That dub techno, or not, what did I say? I think I meant to say dubstep. Yeah, not dub techno. Dubstep producer. So I don't totally hate dubstep. If you look at labels that were running in parallel to this, Apple Pips ran from 2008 to 2013. If you look at labels like Shackleton's Skull Disco, which I think started a little bit earlier but ended around the same time, it's that same kind of vibe. I would probably rather listen to a Skull Disco record than the stuff that I found on Apple Pips, just from sampling through it randomly. But the reason I like this release, it's the only Apple Pips that I have, is that it features Brendon Moeller. I'll give you a picture of Brendon Moeller here with his kind of Eskimo hat on. I thought that was appropriate for the type of cold dub techno sound that he's known for. Brendon has been producing since 2005 under Beat Pharmacy, Brendon Moeller, and Ecologist. And the reason I like his productions, and I always have, is that he has the dub influences. Like, you'll get a lot of really pure, low-hitting dub bass lines, but he also has the ability, just like Rod Modell does in recent years, to hit harder and give you something that you could bang out in a club. And here, I like this record on both sides, but my choice is the Beat Pharmacy remix. I was a little bit confused as to which one is on which side, but I'm pretty confident that the one I'm going to give you a sample here is the Beat Pharmacy remix. It has really nice big bongos that hit and kind of reverberate, and even though it has fundamentally the dub techno feel, like I said, it has that club energy that just gives it that vibe where you feel like you could drop it around midnight, 1 a.m., and it would set the room off without bringing the energy down too much. It's just right in that sweet spot. You can see I got like a little kind of blemish on here. I cannot get this off to save my life, and the funny thing is the needle goes right through it and plays right past that like it's not even there, which is wild. I don't know what the hell that is. Maybe some kind of paint. But anyways, this is a cheap, affordable record, and I like to give you guys cheap options. You could probably go and get this for $7-8 in the used market, and I think it's a good investment. Moving up to a more modern label, there's a label named Lampuya that was originated in 2021 by Alistair Kelly is the label boss's name. And even though the label's only been running for about 1.5 to 2 years, they already have 10 records out. Now, I have 2 records on there. I have the JS Zeiter record, which I really enjoy, and I wanted to feature this one, which is Lampuya 06. Now, before I knew, first of all, I didn't know how to pronounce Lampuya. It looks like Lampuyang if you look at the spelling of it, but I went on Google and tried to figure out how to pronounce it because I'm tired of coming on here doing videos and not knowing how to pronounce any of this stuff. And in looking at that, I found 2 pronunciations that were just Lampuya, and it has more of like an island feel, which kind of fits with the vibe because Lampuya itself is an Indonesian word, which then led me to understand what I was seeing when I looked at the labels. If you look at all of the labels for Lampuya, they feature Indonesian people. So I think whoever is choosing the labels for this record label, whoever's deciding on the art, is basically trying to create a cultural representation of Indonesia. So I'm sure on some level there's ties back either for Alistair or somebody else that's helping with the label. There's ties back to Indonesia. But as far as quality goes for this label, I think it's very high. In the 2 pressings that I have, this and the JS Zeiter, very, very nice high quality pressings, and they're featuring some really unique artists. Here, this is Octal Ohm, their Venezuela EP. I had a hard time picking out which track I wanted to feature on here, but I'm going with the B2 remix by Anton Kubikov of Argentina. And the reason I gravitated towards that is because there's a breakdown in the middle of that track, and it harkens back to my hard trance days. So there was a hard trance duo named Cosmic Gate that was popular maybe from 1998. I mean, they probably still have fans now, but I think they were in their prime from like 1998 to 2003. And they had a track called Melt to the Ocean that I'm pretty sure was the B-side to Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And in that Melt to the Ocean track, there is a monologue of a guy saying how effing wonderful it is to watch that big ball of fire melt into the ocean. And that, I always thought that was a cool vocal to have before a hard trance drop. And here, Anton Kubikov took what seems to be that same original sample, changed the pitch of it, and made it sound a little bit different, but it's still basically the same sentence being uttered there, and I really enjoyed that. Outside of the vocal sample, really nice kind of like sweeping sound. It's almost like if you took if you had a deep house producer try to create a dub techno hybrid track, that's what you would get with this. It's like a classic deep house with big sweeping sounds, something that you might hear from the softer side of a producer like Scott Grooves, also combined with dub techno sounds, and just really nice, high quality, kind of like sleeper level dub techno.
Fucking wonderful it is to watch that big ball of fire melt into the ocean. The only light that is left, like a candle, is on the inside.
In the beginning of the episode, I mentioned Luck of Access because I thought that logo on the Goldmine label looked exactly like it. And I'll show you the Luck of Access logo. You can see very similar three circles, just with a different kind of shape to the break in the circles. But I'm thinking maybe it's just coincidence. But again, here's me going for another purple record, right? As soon as I saw this, I'm like, this is Deep Purple. I gotta at least sample it. And this is J.S. Zeiter's 3 EP. It's the fifth release on Luck of Access, and I think there's only 5. There might be one other release after this. There's either 5 or 6 on Luck of Access. Luck of Access is another dub techno fusion label where there are a couple of pure dub techno tracks, but like Octal and Ohm tend to do, it's fused with maybe deep techno or tech house. So you're getting the type of records that would work in a dub techno set, but are not straight down the middle vanilla dub techno, which is actually more in line with my taste. Like if you just give me a really straight up, like pure dub techno record, it's like, okay, I kind of get it, but it's been so rinsed out. I mean, you can go on YouTube and say, how do I make dub techno? You can type that in and you'll get pages and pages of results. Like the secret is out. It's easy, not easy. It's not easy to produce anything, but the barrier to entry is low in dub techno land. So in order to make anything that stands out, I feel like you almost have to fuse it with something else because all of the original ideas have just been sort of like used up at this point. And J.S. Zeiter is known for, he makes ambient records. I mean, I have a J.S. Zeiter that is completely beatless. There was one that came out on the EV label that was completely beatless. That's really enjoyable. Sometimes he can make harder spectrum club-oriented dub techno. My choice for the track on here is the one Silent Running. And when I see the title Silent Running, that actually takes me back to a track from the 80s by I guess you could call them a progressive rock group called Mike and the Mechanics. They were similar in vibe to the Hooters, which were releasing music around the same time. And Mike and the Mechanics had a track called Silent Running that was basically like this post-apocalyptic the world has ended and we're all scrambling to save ourselves vibe. It kind of has the same vibe as the Hooters famous track All You Zombies. So when I listen to Silent Running here, I don't know if there's really any intentional tie back to that at all, but I do get that sort of spaced out, ominous vibe to it. Like it feels like this is what would play after, in the aftermath of something having gone down and you were sifting through the rubble and trying to reorient yourself and figure out what you were going to do next. So that's my interpretation of it. It's not to say that it sounds necessarily negative, but it sounds like a simplicity. The beat is stripped down. It's a broken beat. It's mostly ambient, and there's a sense of optimism, but it's gentle and it's hesitant. I was saying that it's difficult for dub techno producers to stand out, and I really believe that to be true in 2023. But there are dub techno producers that really are standing out. And speak of the devil, if you look over my shoulder, you'll see Echo Limited. That's the fourth release on Echo Limited's label, and this is the third one. This just came in a few days ago. It's the blue reissue of Echo Limited number 3 by the producer Sndrtn. Sndrtn's name is Frank, like the word Frank, like FRENK Dublin. He, I believe, is the sole owner and producer for all of the records that are on the wonderful Echo Limited label. And there's 6 of them that have been released at this point. They usually, I think they all have at least 5 or 6 tracks on them, which would normally be something that would put me off, because I know if an EP has 6 tracks, that means there's at least 3 on a side, and then you start getting into, is the quality of the cut good, or are these kind of half-baked tracks that aren't fully fleshed out and they should have been. Like I tend to like longer tracks. I feel better buying a 9-minute EP than a record that has 3 3-minute tracks on it. That being said, this guy's making music dub techno related that is so good that I'm throwing all of that caution to the wind. And you can find it. I really recommend you just sit down and sample through everything that Echo Limited has released to this point. You'll find throwbacks to Chain Reaction, to Maurizio on some of their lazier tracks. And the track I'm going to feature for you specifically here is kind of hiding on the B3 as like a 4.5 to 5 minute track on the B side of this here. It's called Sndrtn. Now the artist is Sndrtn, spelled SNDRTN. This track is actually called Send and Return. When I listen to this, I mean, right from the beginning, I love every element that's coming into this track. You can hear some really nice deep bongos in the very first minute, and when the beat starts to drop, there's a really ominous, kind of cracked out guitar pluck that starts to lead or take the lead in the track. And it took me a minute. Again, I'm always with similarities, like this sounds like this and this reminds me of that. It goes all the way back for me to 2005 to the producer Isoli had an album called We Are Monster on Playhouse in 2005. On that album is a track called Pillow Talk, which Sven Väth grabbed, I think, as the single best track on his entire the Sound of the Sixth season. Like when I listened to that mix, like that was the one track. Pillow Talk was the one that I loved out of all of them. And if you go, if you're feeling daring, go and listen to Iso Lee's Pillow Talk, and then compare the guitar pluck that you hear in that to this track here. And I think you'll find that it's not a sample situation. It's just that it's the same sound used in a slightly different way. The whole track, there's other grimy, gritty German synths that are used in it. And it really sounds like if you forced Sven Väth into making his interpretation of dub techno, that's exactly what this track sounds like. And closing out the episode with my nuttiest pick, the one that I freaking adore this track. In my last mix, I'll give you a link down below to my last mix. I think it's video vinyl mix number 15. Every mix I make has one track that really stands out above the rest. And also I feel like every mix that I make has that one dud track where it's like, I swear that had a harder kick drum, and then you like go out on a limb and you drop it into this recorded set where everything's going great, and somehow the track just lets you down. Like you thought it was energy level 7 out of 10, but it's really like a 4 or a 5 out of 10, and the energy just goes like whoop. This track does not do that. This track that I'm about to show you is the one that sends the dance floor and the dancers into, I call it like carnival mode, because there's just something about the elements in this track that just make me go absolutely nuts, and I think they would just like crush a room. This is Cold's Exile release on the AE label. AE is run by Thor, Octal, and Ohm, and anybody that listens to dub techno is probably has a few of these on their shelf. Now this, I didn't even know about this. I think this is, I'm guessing it's a 2017-ish record. It arbitrarily restocked on Juno 3 or 4 months ago, and I think there was only one copy in stock, and I sort of like just bought it. And the track that I want to feature for you here is called Phased Out. Like I said, this is full-blown dance floor circus, 3-ring circus carnival status. There's something about it. The percussion hits really fast and kind of in an energetic manner. And there's this like kind of weird, grimy, I get it's like a bongo. It's not like a bongo hit. It's like a bongo stab that has like a little bit of distortion on it. You'll hear it in the sample. I actually don't know how to describe what the sample is. It just sounds like a gritty boop, or like a boop. I don't know. You'll hear it in the sample here. There's just something about that. I like when you turn it up, the louder you turn it up, the more that element just hits you right in the gut. That's it for my Winter is Here episode. Please feel free to comment down below if you enjoyed any of these picks. Let me know if you have any dub techno recommendations that you picked up in the last year. I'm always down to explore. And I really hope you enjoyed these. Let me know if any of these tracks remind you of anything else that you're really passionate about in your catalog. I love hearing from you guys. That's all for today, and take care. Bye.
Thank you.